Good day to you all. My name is Ishaune Sunemera, technical advisor at 58. Today, we are going to go through feed mixing on farm, mainly focusing on reducing the feed cost, as it is one of the major drivers of cost of production. Agriculture in Zimbabwe is becoming one of the biggest drivers of our economy. By so doing, farmers have to be profitable for them to keep in business, for them to grow. But for them to grow, we have to look at cost-effective means of making feed on farm for our chickens, for our pigs, for them to get to a slaughter weight at a cheaper price. However, I'm going to introduce Lincoln, who is a specialist in pig and poultry. He's going to take us through how best can we make use of available raw materials in Zimbabwe to make feed. Good day to you, Lincoln.
Thank you so much, Ishe.
So Lincoln, please take us through an overview of the pig and poultry industry. What's your take?
Okay, thank you, Ishe. So in Zimbabwe, currently pork, we consuming 700 grams of pork per human, and then compared with South Africa and Mozambique, which is consuming 5.7 and 3.7 kgs respectively, human consumption per capita. So we've seen that the figures are quite low compared with the other countries in the southern region. So there is need for us as Zimbabweans to produce more pork, more chicken, and more protein for Zimbabweans. So today we're going to be going through ways of reducing costs so that we produce more pork, we produce more chicken, and we produce more eggs in the country. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Lincoln. Now that you have mentioned there's need for us to be consuming more chicken, more pork, how best can we produce pork and chicken at a price that is favorable? Okay,
thank you so much. So as we are all aware and we can all agree that feed contributes 70% of our total production costs in any enterprise that we are doing. So today we are going to focus mainly on farm feed mixing so that we cut down on the production costs of our enterprise. So we're going to be talking about our base mixes that we can use on farm so that we cut down on production costs. So when you're making feed on farm, you need raw materials such as maize, you need your soya meal, you need your bran, you need your full-fed soya or mechanically extruded soya, you need limestone, and then you need your base mix, which will be providing you with your vitamins, your micro and macro minerals, your amino acids, and then you also need calcium sources such as limestone so that you can produce your own feed on farm.
Okay, interesting. So when you talk about maize, what is there specific in soya? You mentioned maize, soya, sunflower cake, bran and all. Is there a specific quality of those raw materials which we need for us to make feed, or I can just get it anyway? I can get my rejected maize to make feed. What's your comment on that?
Okay, thank you. So we need top quality raw materials when we are making our feeds. The same raws that we use to make human feed is the same raws that we need to use when we are making the feed for our pigs, for our broilers, and for our layers. So before we get into producing feed, we need to get our raw materials tested so that we are guaranteed that we are making a good quality feed product on farm. For maize, we test for mycotoxins, we test for moisture levels, and then for soya, we're looking at testing for ureas so that we determine if our soya is overcooked, undercooked, or is perfectly cooked. It's supplying in the required protein. And then for bran as well, we do the same. So you just send your raws for the different tests that we've mentioned before we produce feed on farm. And then we mix these raw materials using the formulations that we will be getting from the suppliers of the base mixes. And then when we've done the thorough mixing and production of feed on farm, we then again collect a sample, 500 grams to a kg of sample from the mix that we've done on farm, and then we send it to the lab for NIR test so that we compare the spec of the diet that we've made on farm and the spec of the diet of our supplier, so that we see if we're making the correct product on farm.
So talking about the specs, can you elaborate more on the specifications? Let's say I want to make a broiler feed. What kind of specifications, or how do I match the specifications that you want as a nutritionist or as an advisor?
Okay, thank you. So let's take, for instance, you want to make a 21% crude protein broiler product with balanced protein, energy, fiber, and fat. Your raw materials needs to go through processing first. So your maize needs to go through a hammer mill so that it's crushed and so that it blends well when you're mixing with the other raw materials. So when you are mixing the different raws using the different inclusion rates, depending on the formulations that we would have advised or given to a farmer, you need to make sure that you have thoroughly mixed your product so that there is homogeneity. So when mixing, we just need to make sure that we're not under mixing or over mixing. If you're using a mixer, it needs to be well calibrated such that we are not mixing and other raw materials will sediment and the nutrients won't be evenly distributed from the portion that we are serving to our animals. So we just need to make sure that proper mixing is being done. And when we are using the shovels, make sure that it's being done correctly such that when you collect your sample and you submit to the labs, we compare spec to spec with what is expected from a diet that we have back at the feed manufacturing companies. It needs to match with what you have produced on farm. Okay.
All right. Thank you very much, Lincoln. I think this is all about the feed mixing on farm. So you can tell us more about, when you talk about the mixer, like what kind of mixer, and is there anything else that we can do after mixing our feed? Can we make our own pellets on farm? How can we go about it?
Okay, so for broilers, yes, we can make our own pellets on farm. You can get your pelletizer, which will then form a pellet from the mesh that we had produced. And then if you are producing a starter crumble, then you reduce down the pellets to a crumble size, which is easily palatable and easily digestible for the young birds that you'll be producing. But for our feeds that we are producing for pork, there's no need for pelleting. We can just feed them as meshes. If you're making a winner meal, you need them to be a sieve size of 4 to 6 millimeters if it's a creep and a winner meal. Then for your other diets, your grower, your lactating, your dry sow and bone meal, it's 6 to 8 millimeters, the sieve that you'll be using. And then you just feed them straight as a mesh to your pigs. Thank you. Interesting.
So now that I assume in Zimbabwe, in 2025 harvesting season, we're going to experience a bumper harvest. So is this specifically for commercial farmers or for emerging farmers? Let's say I've got 500 chickens. Can I make use of these formulations and premix which you are talking about?
Yes, you're correct. These base mixes can be used by all groups of farmers. We covering from the small scale, medium scale, and commercial farmers. The base mixes that we produce make from as little as a ton of feed up to whatever tonnage that you want to produce. So with whatever harvest of maize that we have on farm, and then we source our soya, we source our bran, we source our limestone, we can make a ton of feed on farm for the small scale farmers, and then for the commercial producers, they can produce many tons of feed using the different the formulations that we'll provide to the farmers. So with the good harvest, this is the high time for farmers to cut down on production costs by reducing the cost of buying full feeds from different feed producers, and then making use of the bumper harvests, making use of the raws that they're going to harvest from their farms to produce their own feeds on farm.
All right, thank you very much.